Good morning, First Presbyterian family. I hope this finds you well on Thursday morning. And I am looking out. It is still overcast. There's some traffic on Beltline, but not bad. It's just the usual people trying to get from one side of town to the other. Today, I want to head into the home stretch of our study on Ephesians. Began several weeks ago with an overview, and then each week that followed looked at a particular chapter. Today, I want to look at chapter 6, part of it, because we did first part of it last week, and the tail end I'm going to look at next week, as well as give a summary overview of the book. Today, I'm focusing primarily on the full armor of Christ. The resource that I've used and have continued to use has been What the Bible is All About by Henrietta Mears. And she gives a creative example of going into Ephesians and thinking of it as one of these great palaces. And those first three rooms, which talk about our position in Christ, the further in you go into the palace, the further in you went, meant your position, your rank, the kind of audience that you could have with the king. And then 4, 5, and 6 are like individual rooms. Chapter 4, she talked about that being the jewel room, because we talk about our position in Christ and who we are in Christ, beginning with that and the titles we have with that. Chapter 5, she called that one the oratory or the choir room, because it talks about how we conduct ourselves and use an example. Don't get like the bad parties that go on in Ephesus, but speak to one another in psalms and singing to one another. I think mainly meaning that our speech should be good among ourselves. She focused on that chapter and that chapter on those relationships, how we should walk in love, walk in the light, and walk carefully. Looking at the first two verses of Ephesians 5, and then verse 8 for walk in the light, and then 15 and 16, walk carefully. Focused on that. I addressed the relational end at the second part of master-slave, husband-wife, parent-child. And there's a degree of reciprocity between them. Much more we could unpack there, but I focused on that. What follows then is the armory. In fact, she calls that the armory. And some of these grand homes actually had armories. There was all for show. It was just all for show. And but to display the power of what they had. I guess to show, to impress people. So it had a purpose. And here we're talking about the full armor of Christ, and in chapter 6, verse 10. Finally, be strong in the Lord and the strength of his power. We begin with that and putting on the whole armor of God. Outlines some sections of what one has. The girdle of truth, that covers a very vulnerable area around here, around the waist area. The breastplate of righteousness, that covers the area up here, the heart area. Then the shoes, which covers the feet and even up to the ankles and even midway. Remember at this time that just to have sandals was considered a luxury item. The bulk of the people doing the bulk of their day, all the day, they are barefoot. And just to have sandals was a big luxury. To have any kind of boots, shoes, very much the luxury, but it preserves the feet so well. Now, if you walk all the time barefoot, you're going to get calluses, you're going to be protected. But for those of us who wear shoes pretty much all the time, feet are very vulnerable. I also think about getting up at night and stepping on a Lego if you're having to walk across the den. Beyond that stage of life where any child's toy is out there, but that can be a place, feet can be very vulnerable. We don't think of the feet as vulnerable, but they can be. But they are protected too. That is it's the shoes, it's the gospel of peace. That is an active going out to do role as well. And then we have the helmet of salvation. That's covering our head. So far, and I'm skipping around the order, we've covered our heads up here, midsection, and below. With the shield of faith, that's going to cover a lot too, and a way to respond to the fiery darts. And again, those shields that they had often were soaked in water, and they were. So if a fiery dart came, it's going to extinguish. It's going to go into this wet leather, and it's going to extinguish. And then using the sword of the word, the only assertive weapon, is the only weapon and the only way of really going out. The shield could be, because you shield, you protect yourself that way. It's a very active thing to do, but really it's only the sword that's taking you out there. So it makes it quite interesting there that we are all covered by these basic truths of truth, of righteousness, of salvation, of the good news of the gospel. And it is faith and the word that protects us from those fiery darts and the way we go into battle. That is how we are to be covered. There's much you could look in this. I'm going to encourage you to ponder that. How do you cover yourselves in the Word? How do you cover yourselves in the shield of faith? This is where he is drawing that analogy. Remember, he is in prison, so he's got a prison guard with him. So he could even just be taking notes. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. He's got that analogy there. I think it's very important to remember about the threats, the challenges, spiritual warfare. I don't want to be one of these, I see a devil behind every stick, every rock, every tree kind of people, but we do get challenged in our lives not to live with the kind of integrity that we should be living, that we're called to live. There are ways that we get challenged and how we respond. There are times we get caught up in self-doubt of our position in Christ. We respond with the Word. Those are my thoughts for the day. I wish you a good one. And next week, we will conclude Ephesians, and we will do a bit of a look ahead. So again, wish you well on this day, and have a great weekend.